going alphabetical order. Me with the last name Michelson, I was usually in the alphabetical ghetto in school, so I can relate for those people with last names that are way down there. But we're going to go alphabetical just to be fair, and we're going to lead off the introductions with Lori.
Thank you so much, Dennis, and thank you so much, Tim. I hope everybody can hear me. I am really excited to be a part of this conference, and Tim and Dennis, I give you props for pivoting in the middle of COVID and going ahead and pulling everything together. We're all learning day by day. But for everybody in the group, my name is Lori Eberhardt. I'm a partner at Apollo Sports and Entertainment Law Group. We are a 100% female-owned law firm based in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we focus on sports and entertainment law. I've been practicing motorsports law for my entire career. Know the ins and outs of the tracks, the teams, the suppliers, everything. And we are narrow and deep. We don't litigate, we don't do tax, we don't do estate planning. All we do is sports and entertainment law, and particularly myself do motorsports law. So I'm delighted to be here and delighted to be a part of this, this panel and this conference. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Lori. Our next guest has probably the best view from his office window of anybody at RTBC today. Jimmy, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, thank you, Dennis and Tim, for putting on this conference. Certainly want to thank my co-panelists, Lori and Cindy, as well. My name is Jimmy McMillan. I am the Chief Diversity Officer for Penske Entertainment and Senior Corporate Counsel for IndyCar, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and IMS Productions. Very excited to be here today to talk about this topic, especially during this very difficult time, but grateful to have some way to connect with our friends across the industry.
Our next panelist has probably the best racing wing in the backdrop of her picture that we will see on the show today. Cindy, please introduce yourself to our panel or to our group.
Thank you, Dennis. I should probably make a trivia question out of that. Whose car is that? I'll tell you all, it's the amazing Lynn St. James, and I'm honored to have that as my background. She's my hero. As you know, I've been in the motorsports industry a long time, from Roush Racing to many different programs. But this year I started a company called GS Events with my partner, Teresa Gilpatrick. It's Gilpatrick Sisson Events. And my partner was the head of the Ferrari Club for the last 10 years. And we came together serendipitously on April 28th on LinkedIn and found quickly that we had mission alignment, that we'd been in the motorsports automotive industry for so long, and that we really wanted to focus on empowering women in the industry. We're not a Me Too movement. We're not a male bashing. We're all about being inclusive. And we've launched some really great programs that is taking the women in the industry by storm. Thank you for letting me be here today.
We're proud to have you with us, Cindy. I know you're going to bring a lot to the discussion. I'm going to throw the first question out. We're going to start in that exact order. We're going to go to you first, Lori. Where has the racing industry gone wrong in the past with their diversity initiatives?
Wow, you sent me a real softball, Dennis. I appreciate that. Here's what I would say is, I don't want to look back and say what the industry's done wrong, because I think we need to take a progressive approach to saying now that diversity and inclusion is part of the national narrative. It's been on everybody's talking list. It's really become a priority for motorsports, but not just motorsports. It's also become a priority for the other leagues. You look at the NFL has announced $250 million that they're going to invest in social justice issues. The National Basketball Association, Players Association is investing $300 million in social justice. You look what's happened at NASCAR with their complete pivot on the Confederate flag. And you see what's happened there with two new teams coming in that are diversity. One was Michael Jordan's team with Bubba Wallace, and the other is Daniel Suarez, Trackhouse Entertainment. You see the same thing, and I'm sure Jimmy will talk about this, about the new IndyCar team and the support that his organization is giving to those. So I think it's, number one, it's become a priority in the industry, and people are being intentional with who they hire, vendors that they deal with, where they're placing their money, to say, hey, we need to cast a wider net because there's talent comes in all different colors, shapes, and sizes. But in order to compete in the economy and to be the best that you can be in whatever you do, building race cars or putting on events or advising clients, you've got to have the best talent. And so I think it's a priority, and people are focusing and doing things. And I'm really excited about what's going on. In addition to that, looking forward, you have a bunch of leagues that are spending money on diversity issues. You have all these national brands coming out during the summer and with the whole Black Lives Matter, for instance, that are making statements, Coca-Cola, Budweiser, Johnson & Johnson, saying, hey, we're committed to making a difference. We're committed to social justice. We're committed to civil rights, and we are going to be proactive in making the change. So that's why it's a priority with brands, with teams, with leagues, with motorsports companies that are saying, hey, we just need to think about it a little bit differently and do business differently. So I'm really excited about the progress that particularly our sport has made, because there's been a lot of positive things that have happened.
Jimmy, you're next up.
So when you ask what has the industry done wrong, I think the industry in some ways has been a microcosm of some of the failings of America as it relates to race. There's some good movies out there that, you know, if somebody wanted to look into one, I just actually saw one last night, it's Gold and Glory. It's on PBS if you want to take a look at that. It touches on Charlie Wiggins' race career here in Indianapolis and how those drivers were not allowed back in the 30s and 40s to race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So they created their own Colored Racers Association, and the challenges that these very talented drivers had, because based on their race alone, not only were they not able to drive, they weren't able to serve on pit teams. And Charlie at one point in time, I believe, had to work as a janitor for a winning driver just to be able to be in the garage, and then had to watch the race from the colored section of the stands. A lot of people don't know that history when it comes to racing. You also, Willie T. Ribbs has a movie out now on Netflix talking about the challenges he faced throughout his career, trying to race in stock car races, being told that if he raced, he might not make it out alive, being prevented from racing in many entities because of the color of his skin. Those things are continuous. We also know that there's an economic gap that exists in this country, and that racing is a very expensive sport. And so therefore it has been challenging for people of color. When you talk about the economic gap between whites and blacks, it's also challenging to get that opportunity to have the money, to have the sponsorship, to get into the sport. There's also a networking issue. A lot of the sport and the opportunities to come to the sport are very close. This is a close-knit sport, and opportunities come through family members. Opportunities come through close ties, probably more so than any other sport, major sport that we have. Almost every job is already gone before it even hits, before it's even broadcast or advertised. And so if you're not in that network and you're not in that clique, oftentimes you don't get the opportunities because no one knows you and no one associates with your groups. Our marketing efforts and education efforts have been low. As you know, a lot of times our media and marketing talk to our fans as if they've been fans of the sport for years. And really, this is not just a diversity failing. This is a failing in all our industry. We have not provided one-on-one education about why someone would want to watch a bunch of cars go in a circle for 2.5 hours. We need to go back to the basics, not only with respect to diverse participants, potential diverse fans, but all of our fans and all of our potential fans, regardless of color, on why racing is important, what the rules are, how the sport operates, the different basics, so we can bring new fans into the sport. I am also excited about the future that we have and the things that we're doing, whether it's Bubba Wallace and Michael Jordan in NASCAR and the work that Brandon Thompson is doing over there, or our Force Indy team, which we just announced, which is an all African-American owned, will be drivers, engineers, the work that we're doing with Force Indy to get that off the ground at the F2000 level. And hopefully, as Roger Penske has said, have an African-American driver in the Indianapolis 500.
Fantastic. That's when you're teamed up with Penske, you know you're going to have some success indeed. Cindy, you're up next.
No, thank you very much. And I'm a bit like Lori. I would rather look to the future than the past. Being a woman in the industry and doing the networking sessions that I've been doing now, it's really neat to hear that women don't, in a lot of cases, don't feel like they're not included. The main thing is for women in the past, and I hope this changes for the future, is that we need to be invited to the table. We need to have a say at the table. I started a networking group with Lynn about 3 years ago at Car Week, and we thought, let's invite 10 women that don't know each other. We all went to dinner, all in the industry, and the common theme was we never get invited to the events, if that makes sense. So that's something in the past that's really been an aha moment for me. I also agree with Jimmy. You talk about the economic gaps and the networking gaps. Again, I focus that we need to bring women. And if you think about it, it's also a great place to bring more fans, bring their families, because women make about 80% of the purchasing decisions, and we represent 52% of the population. So the more we can market to and embrace women as mothers or daughters into the sport, I think we're going to see a tremendous upsurge in the fan base. I had the honor of talking to Paul Fanner yesterday, and he is vehement that if we engage women, and Jimmy, I know I don't know what your thoughts are on the women's side, but for me, that's where my emphasis is, my focus is, and I'm very excited to see what's going on with the W Series, the announcement they made last week about the shouldering with the F1 Series. I myself am so excited to be in Austin at COTA on October 23rd, and I'm hoping to have a big party with lots of gals there so we can embrace the W Series and let them know we support them and hopefully grow that series in the United States and beyond.
Fantastic, Cindy. A few years ago, I was honored to be invited by Mr. John Warniak to speak on a panel about the future of racing in SEMA. And I said the big key to increasing all of motorsports was really the grassroots effort of the sport. While it's great to see what's going on in IndyCar, it's great to see what's going on with these other major series events and the W Series and F1 working together. I really think the grassroots is where we need to do a better job of helping to get that track looking, that level of racing look more diverse. If we're going to develop the next star, it's so expensive to go racing though. So the question is, Lori, I'm throwing it to you first here. What can we do better as a group going forward to help encourage the growth of grassroots racing for women, for minorities, for those who have felt excluded from the sport in the past?
It's a great question, and I'll get that, what we can do to help grow it. I do want to reiterate, Jimmy, I loved your comments about the history about motorsports. I do want everybody to know, Cindy, you'll remember this too. When I first started walking in motorsports, women weren't allowed in the pits and in NASCAR. They had a female PR director. You guys remember Alexis Laris, and she had to have special escorts to go into the garage area. I mean, that's bizarre to me. So that's how much we've progressed. And some people had some really, really hard times, and it's awful. So we should change and do different. But where I see the change coming, and I have to give it up to Jimmy's group and Roger Penske at Penske for providing some leadership. When leaders in our sport say, we're going to invest in minority teams, we're going to put women in positions of power, that is going to trickle down to the grassroots, but you have to have good leadership. And I think we've got really good leadership in Indy and in Charlotte that's saying we need to be more inclusive. We need to be diverse. So number one, I think having good leadership is key. Number two, it's going to take those brands, the brand manager at Coca-Cola who says, I'm going to follow our corporate principles and I'm going to invest in that African-American racing team. I'm going to invest in the W Series. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is according to my corporate goals, and we're going to change the world. But that brand manager has to be able to show a return, or else they're not going to have their job for very much longer. So that brand manager's got to have cover from the corporate governance or from the CEOs, but people have to talk the talk, but also walk the walk with how they're spending their money in the economic investments. I know the IndyCar program, the Race to Change, one of the prongs of their platform is to develop a procurement system where you're spending money at minority or female or hub, historically underutilized businesses, hub businesses. You're choosing to spend your money with those type of vendors and sourcing your materials. If each of us, from the brand manager down to the person that's buying ticket stock at the local level, says, I'm going to buy from a minority-based firm, we are going to change the world. But it's those little decisions that we make every day, from the brand manager to the track operator, that we can do it. So those are the things that I see.
Well, Jimmy, the road to Indy has given opportunities to some young racers I've worked with in media coaching them that would not have been able to race in those series without that scholarship money, but it's still not enough to make a big change. Can IndyCar even afford to do any more, though, than what they're doing now? Because they're doing a lot. What can we do again going forward to help grow those ladder series and the grassroots in motorsports that we're not doing now?
Strategically, I think that we have to start with the fact that diversity efforts are financially beneficial. We have to tie and understand that, look, when you look out in the stands and you have empty seats, that's opportunity. The people that you're not reaching out to, whether it's women, whether it's people of color, Asians, African Americans, Latinos, if you look in your stands and you see empty seats, those seats are potential dollars that will increase revenue. I'll give you an example. When we first started this Race for Equality and Change, our sales folks came to me and said, Jimmy, what do you think we should do to support the Race for Equality and Change? I said, the first thing that you should do is reach out to all of our major sponsors and ask them if they have a chief diversity officer. You just mentioned Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has an expansive diversity program. So does Firestone. So does many of the major Chevy, Honda, Ford. They all have diversity programs that the racing industry has failed to tap into because they don't have a diversity program going. And guess what's in that chief diversity officer has? They have a budget. They have a marketing budget. They have a support budget to help support initiatives that are related to their company's activation of diverse initiatives with their partners. To date, many racing entities, promoters, and others don't have a diversity program. And so the conversation never comes up. The discussion never comes up about these extra dollars. And so one of the things that I suggest everyone do, even at the grassroots level, is have conversations with your partners about, hey, we're thinking about a diversity initiative of some sort. Maybe it's a go-kart program like we have here at NXG with NXG Youth Motorsports. Perhaps it is reaching out to a diverse organization and hosting an event there, whether it's a car show or some form of drag racing event or some educational event, something that you could partner with. Maybe it's one of your driving schools doing a day that is focused on women. Maybe it's an educational program that is, hey, here's the one-on-one of the sport for women fans. But that's going to do two things. One, it tells the sponsor that you care about the same things that they care about when it comes to diversity. Two, it may give you access to additional dollars that were never present before, because now you're aligned with another initiative that they have that they're trying to move forward. And I think that's what we have to do from the onset. Two, we've got to look at our hiring. And I'm not just talking about drivers and engineers and pit crews, which are certainly important, but I'm talking about the people that you have working in the front office, the people that you have working in marketing and legal. We've got to look different. Every time you add a person to your executive or administrative staff, that person has a ripple effect of family members, friends, co-workers, a network that may not have been interested in the sport, but now will be following that sport every time they post on social, every time they have their race. Right now, I have an entourage of about 80 African Americans that come to the race simply because they knew me, and now they're fans and they follow the sport. And so that's why you see the activation of looking for diverse employees, developing them, recruiting them is such a big part. Same thing with a procurement program that Lori talked about. We're trying to do business with MBEs. You have to be invested in people if you want them to be invested in us. So when it comes to women-owned businesses, we want people to know that we're putting our money where our mouth is and that we're invested in those companies. And then by and large, those companies come back and may start asking about sponsorship opportunities to reinvest back in the sport that's invested in them. So all of these things seem pretty simple, but I can tell you that when you start activating on them, you will see a return in your investment, and it will fund some of the things that we're trying to do in this space.
Very good points indeed, Jimmy. And IndyCar is doing a fantastic job. Cindy, when Danica Patrick was running in NASCAR, I did a survey with the website and the radio show up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, that I was a part of at the time. And I found that about 60% or more of women NASCAR fans had a negative image of or negative outlook towards Danica Patrick. Why have so many women racers had a hard time winning over the fan base that should have been easy to win over?
I don't know if you want to ask me that question. I'll just be blunt. Fans are driven by personalities. And you think about a lot of athletes, and they have these huge social media followings because they treat their fans good. I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay. I don't know Danica. I've never met Danica. She did get a lot of media for the sport, but I would kind of disagree with you in the sense that I think that there are a lot of women fans, and they didn't come just because of Danica. They've been around a long time. You go to a racetrack and you see a husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend or kids or family, they're all wearing their favorite drivers. They're still buying the product, which I think is really important. I really liked what both Lori and Jimmy said as well. First, I'll address Lori. As an example, Lori at the beginning said that her firm is 100% female. Since 2017, about 53% of the graduates from law school have been women, yet only 22% of the women are partners in law firms. I know that doesn't relate to racing, but it's across the industry. So I think she made a really good point, is look at women-owned business. The other thing with Jimmy I really liked is the sponsorship side of it. I've been a sponsor person for my whole career. I've raised about $60 million for drivers, tracks, and teams in this sport. And he is absolutely right. You've got to go out and dig deep into the social justice dollars. What we're seeing right now, what we need to be grabbing, like Dr. Myers said, is they're seeing an uptick in manufacturers. Even the manufacturers have to have some kind of social responsibility. So the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, soccer. I mean, soccer announced today they had $1 billion loss in 2020. They're going to go out rampantly to try to find those dollars. We need, as a coalition with all the NGBs, to be doing the same exact thing and telling our story. And this year, 2020, with what happened with Bubba and Richard Petty and how graceful that amazing man is, we made a lot of noise this year in the industry, and we have the right to raise our hand and go out there and ask for the same dollars that the other major leagues are doing. Just saying.
Very good point indeed, Cindy. Okay, Lori, I'm just looking for one suggestion from each of you going forward here on how we can basically encourage folks to do the right thing and how we can convince them that this will be a good return on their investment.
One thing.
Geez,
Dennis, that's hard. I would say to try it. Hire a female-owned business. I'd love to be a lawyer for everybody on the call. We'd love to have your business, and we'd love to show you how we can change your world. But I would try it and see how the returns have, but you've got to invest in it. You can't just say, I'm going to throw $20 into some kind of program. I encourage everybody to try it because I think the future of our sport is dependent on it. The diversity, the females, Hispanics, Latinos, any non-white person, we need to be hugging them at the gates and bringing them in.
Very good point indeed. Jimmy, one thing that we can do to help the skeptics see that this will help the return on investment?
I would say don't be afraid to change. You have to be willing to do something different, particularly if you're failing. If you're struggling to bring in fans, to bring in support, to bring in sponsors, I am urging you to try this as a different method. The NFL is extremely diverse. The NBA is extremely diverse. There are diverse entities and operations and corporations that are extremely successful. Microsoft doesn't just sell phones to white people, nor does Apple. They all have realized that by the year, I think it's, in 20 some years, the white people will be the minority in this country. And if you are not looking at the fact that you are losing potential opportunities for skill, talent, and most importantly, dollars. You brought up Danica Patrick. I wanted to say this. Here's the plus about Danica. Women knew who Danica was, whether they hated her or liked her. They actually paid attention. So it doesn't matter whether 60% of women didn't like her. The fact is 60% of women even knew that there was a female driver in the sport. Same thing with Bubba. There were Black people who had no clue what NASCAR was or didn't care until they figured out, oh, there's a Black driver named Bubba Wallace. Now you have a name. Now you have Michael Jordan. And so try something different. Realize that if I look around and then everyone looks like me, then I can only expect dollars from people who look like me. And I have money just like you have money. And I'd love to spend it in motorsports. But you have to make an effort to welcome me to the table and get me involved and engaged. Try something different.
Very good point. And like old Dale Earnhardt said, I don't care if you say boo. I'm just hoping you don't say who when my name gets announced. Cindy, one thing.
I am so excited to answer this question. I get goosebumps. When we launched our company, Teresa and I, on September 28th, our phone was ringing off the hook. And it was from companies or institutions, I'm going to say, like number one driving school in the nation, starts with an S. They came to us and they said, we want to create women programs. We're right now in the throes of creating 2 events this year, one at Laguna and one at Lion Rock. There was a major auction house, probably the largest in the world, that starts with an M. This morning, they just responded to us. They want us to do women-only events, curated events at their auctions. They believe, both institutions, if we can get women to feel invited, remember when I first started speaking, and comfortable at events, they will come and they will spend money. And I know that will happen. Just like you, Jimmy, I've got a checkbook and I will spend the money, but I want to feel comfortable where I'm spending my money.
Fantastic. Lori, final comment.
I just had a really good idea that came from Bob Pockris in the audience, and he had an idea that at least in NASCAR, limit cup teams to 2 charters, but they can have up to 4 if they fund diversified teams. That's a really good idea, and that shows some good leadership from the leagues. Thank you all for being here. I want to thank Tim and Dennis. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Jimmy. This has been a really great discussion, and I hope to continue the conversation. And I'm happy about our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Jimmy, final comment.
Thank you, Tim, Dennis, Lori, Cindy. Great conversation. I want to make sure everyone knows I'm available offline anytime. Certainly available to help. I know a lot of folks struggle with this and don't have the internal resource of somebody who can help. I'm open to help across. This is an industry-wide effort, and so I want to help across the board. I do want to point out, look at NHRA. Those who know the sport know that NHRA and drag racing in general, even at the grassroots level, as Dennis points out, drag racing has always historically not had the same challenges as some of the other racing entities with diversity, whether it was women or minorities. And it's because if you look at most of those sports, they're very welcoming and have always been welcoming. The buy-in cost to bring your car to the track and just run what you brung has always created this opportunity on Wednesday nights and Tuesday nights for a more diverse audience. And I think the rest of racing can learn a lot from some of the success that you see at drag racing tracks and within the NHRA itself. So I do want to make that point as an example of where it can have a revenue return.
Fantastic. Cindy, take us home.
Oh, again, thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. I would love folks to go to my site, gsevents.live, and see who some of our partners are who are out there trying to make a difference in this space. I'm always been a philanthropist. We need to think of a way in the industry to raise these dollars, coveted dollars to grow our sport. Again, what I see what's going on in Europe and the UK with the W Series and them starting a women's driver development program, we need the same thing. We need it desperately. And I hope all the NGBs will look at this as a serious thing to help us grow our sport. Thank you, everybody.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I want to thank everybody for a fantastic panel. To lead us off here, boy, oh boy, we start with Dr. Jamie Meyer, who gets us all revved up, diversity and inclusion with real grassroots and real of a return on investment, which drives us in sport. Thank you guys for being such a great friend. Tim, I'll let you get the next panel set up. Just from a timekeeping standpoint, folks, we're going to take this next panel from 10 Central down to 10:30, and we're going to